So here I'm thinking whether I should tell you the story of divorce and betrayal and drugs and murder. Yes, murder. Even prison. I have some of that in my family. But I'm going to save that story for a different time. Today I'm just going to keep it a little simpler, and I'm going to talk about other stories, not all that glamorous, but hopefully will be inspiring. And basically, I can tell you that from a child, having left Cuba when I was 1 year old, with my 1 month old brother, with just the clothes on our back, my parents having just signed off to the government everything they owned, leaving it back in the house, because all of that belonged to the state. It belonged to the government. They couldn't take any of it with them. Not the forks, not the knives, not the iron, which they had already done a inventory. And the day that we were leaving, they came to double check and make sure that everything in the inventory was still there. They couldn't find the iron. They couldn't find the iron, so we couldn't leave. So a neighbor was very gracious and brought an iron and pretended she was returning the iron to my mom. And said, "Here, I forgot to give you the iron back. Here it is." And with that, check. We grab whatever little things we have, just a little baggie for the four of us, and off we went. We left Cuba in '62 through Panama, Mexico, ended up in Miami. Eventually, I think a year and a half or so later, my third brother was born here. But by then, my dad, all he was able to do is dishes and toilets. That was all there was. Too many Cubans leaving at the time during that exile period. But my father had other friends that had left and ended up in Puerto Rico and were able to find work in Puerto Rico and were able to help him find some place where we could go and a job. And so my dad went, secured all that, and then asked, called for us, so to speak. And so we then flew, my mom flew with the two of us to Puerto Rico. Very brave people to do all these things for just a 1 year old, or we're now a 2 year old, a 1 year old, and just a few days old, moving to Puerto Rico, another strange place that no one had ever seen, they hadn't seen. Turns out it looks a lot like Cuba. They speak Spanish, and they were at U.S. territory, so there were opportunities, but it was back in the 60s and it was very undeveloped in many ways. So they went there as an adventure. It was an adventure, and that's what happened. So over time, I remember by the time I was 5 or so, my youngest brother was born in Puerto Rico, and somewhere around that time, I remember my first mattress. My first mattress came. We no longer had to sleep on the floor. Of course, I had to share this mattress. There were, I think, 2 of them, and they were first to come. And it was just about a couple of weeks or so later, someone brought in the box springs for the mattress. So, yay, now we had almost a full bed. We didn't have the legs yet. That took a long time. I don't know why. Months later, finally, somebody showed up with the legs for the beds. So we finally had complete beds that we were sharing because we were young enough still that we could share these beds. And so that's what happened. Eventually, things kept happening. My parents kept growing. My dad was working as not as an electrical engineer, but in an electrical engineering firm, and he was drawing the plans for construction, remodeling, and things like that to say, well, this is how much electricity is going to run through here. This is where the panel is going to go. This is where the transformer and the exterior and interior lights and sockets and switches and all of that electrical stuff. He was drawing and putting together on a plan. And but he was working super hard. There was a lot of work, thank goodness. In Puerto Rico, this firm was fairly big, and so they had a lot of contracts, and they were able to get a lot of these contracts. But it kept my father super busy. My mom had found work at a place. She had studied optometry in Cuba, so but she wasn't able to practice that in Puerto Rico, so she ended up having to study a little bit of drawing and design so that she could help my dad, because my dad was falling asleep right on the paperwork. My mom would wake up the next day, you didn't even finish your work. Oh my God, I fell asleep. It was chaotic. I remember these things. My father leaving in a rush to go back to work with unfinished work. It was a memory to have. Over time, they were able still to put us through private schools just to keep us out. They thought of what the public school system, so they put us through secular but private schools throughout elementary school. And then by the time we got to high school, or I got to high school, they were able to bring us in to a Catholic high school. So we didn't really, in the end, we have food. The only thing that the Christmases, we have to be thankful today because there was a lot of family and friends, particularly friends, that contributed to our Christmases. Our Christmas was not like, oh, write a letter to Santa and you're going to get whatever you wish. Occasionally we got what we wanted, but for the most part, we got whatever, now I know, whatever people were able to give us, whatever my parents were able to gather, and whatever we were able to get. And that's what Christmases look like for the most part. But we didn't really miss anything. I remember learning to drive at a young age and driving with my dad and working with him in the summers because by then he had left that other job and opened up his own construction company with a partner. So they were doing electrical contracting. And so they hired the people, the electricians and everything else, and they were doing the building, the remodeling and all that. They were the ones in charge of all that part in the contracting world. But as you all know, real estate and contractors, they're very cyclical, so there were rough times for us. I remember them buying their first house. I remember moving to this neighborhood. I remember after a while me going to college. I mean, so there were a lot of things that I was able to have. But the one thing I couldn't have was a marriage that still lasts. They're 83, and thank God they're still married. And I wasn't able to have that. As a matter of fact, there's 4 of us, and all 4 of us have been divorced. Go figure. None of us wanted that, and yet all of us have been divorced at least once. I am on my 4th. Yes, on my 4th. No, I don't learn lessons easily. The first one was a disaster. That one lasted the longest. That was 9 years. But the divorce was horrible as it could get. Courtroom after courtroom, even after the divorce, lawsuit after lawsuit, it was terrible. It affected my second marriage. That lasted about a year before we knew that it wasn't going anywhere. By year 4, we had already separated. And then I had 2 boys with the first one, 1 girl with the second one. And not long after that, I married a friend of the second one, and that lasted a year. We didn't have any kids, thank goodness, and that was definitely planned. But that was that. It lasted about a year and a half at the most. By the time we got all the paperwork done, it wasn't going to happen. But then I began to take a real close look at myself, as far as my relationships and why was this happening. And I decided to stay not celibate entirely, but at least avoid serious relationships and things like that. And I mostly did stay mostly celibate, mostly. Yeah, I give or take here, something here and there. But for the most part, I tried to behave good. And I had separated myself from the faith, from Catholicism and all that, and decided that I was just hard-headed and stubborn as I am, just look for other avenues. Never forgot about God. Always knew that He was there, but I just wasn't sure what He wanted for me, and particularly as far our relationship is concerned and everything else, until one day I meet my wife, and it wasn't long before we were exchanging information. We met briefly, but ended up exchanging ideas and everything over the internet for a period of time. And one good time, I ended up flying to New York to physically really spend some time with her and meet her. She didn't barely remember me from having met me earlier. And so in the end, I proposed to her, where else? Statue of Liberty. At the feet of the Statue of Liberty, I proposed to her. And the photographer was more excited than my wife was, because he was there taking photos for somebody else. And he turns over, and I'm on my knees proposing to my wife. And he's flipping out. And he turns out that he's one of the photographers that works there. And he got to capture that moment. So to him, it was super exciting. So we ended up doing a few poses, and we bought, of course, a package of photos from the Statue of Liberty where we were proposing and doing all that. So that was fun. But after that, of course, we drove back. I came back, and then I went back to get her, but it was like to get her. She said, listen, let's get out of here. This is New York. It's too cold. You're from Argentina. Yes, it's cold over there, but come on, let's go to Miami. And she agreed. So we drove back during that weekend that we proposed. So that's basically how we ended up happening. And so we came to Miami, but we were just getting really to know each other. I mean, she had brought baggage. I had brought my baggage. I got 3 previous marriages. Kids. She doesn't have kids, never wanted kids, but she had been married to somebody who had kids, and it was a struggle too. She had issues, and there were things, and she brought baggage from that relationship. And both of us carried major trust issues that we thought we had worked, but we still had a lot of work to do. And we ended up having to spend time to learn to trust one another. And still looking for, what do we do? What do we do? And it's basically, what's yours is yours, and mine is mine. And we had not really quite clicked until a few months back last year. Not long after my birthday. My birthday's in May. I turned 57. And I think it may have been June or so. She's a massage therapist. And she tells me about this person that she's working with doing massages that lives in Miami. I'm not going to try to reveal too much because he happens to be somebody in the 10X group. Somebody big that you would know. But it's not the big guy. But still, she knew through him that he was involved in things that she knew that I liked, like real estate and things like that. So she told me about him and says, you should look him up and follow him and see what comes of it. And it didn't take long before I realized, there's something here to this. But I wasn't exactly sure where he was working and who he was working with until she finally found out about a month or so later. And she tells me, and I start looking that up. And who is this guy? Grant Cardone. Grant, I know he knows. He gets this from a lot of people, but so I'm sure he can relate. At first, what an arrogant, egocentric SOB and blah blah blah. I don't know that I want to listen to the guy, but as I'm saying all this, I'm hearing him out. I'm not missing out on a word he's saying because he's capturing me. He's speaking truth. He's just like almost choking all my old self and all my disbeliefs and everything that I had just left behind and all those dreams and all these things, and he's reigniting something inside of me. And I'm thinking, what in the world? I mean, the guy can be a total a-hole, and I could use other words, but he's onto something here. So I kept listening and listening and listening until finally the 10X thing starts getting announced, and I said, that's it, sign me up. So I bought the expensive $95 ticket. General admission. I figured, you know what, I'll go and I'll just see what this is about. 10X, Already Hearts Research, this is number 3. Okay, he's done 2 more. The previous ones were, whatever. But this time, his guy, he wants to fill up Marlins Stadium. I mean, really? You're really gonna do that? All right, I'll buy the $95 ticket. How's that? So I ended up contributing with my $95 ticket, and it wasn't long before I realized I needed to move up. Yes, sir. I needed to get closer, so I became an ambassador. Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna do an ambassador thing. And as I continue to listen and look at the different things and start experimenting with Cardone U, which came with the program, I realized, you know what, I need another upgrade. I went for VIP. So finally, I ended up going as a VIP to the 10X conference, and it was there that among all the speakers, all of whom spoke a lot of truth to me, especially Grant, everything he said just hit me in a very special way. But I came to realize something super important, and I came to realize it during Elena Cardone's speech. And Elena was talking about how she felt and how she felt about her husband, about relationship, and making certain decisions that have impacted her life, her marriage, and her family. And the support that she decided that she needed to give her husband. And as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, my wife is in the massage business, dreaming of a mobile spa business that she could bring to corporations, that she could bring to wedding planners and other planners of sorts, and having dreams that are very tamed for her abilities and for our situation. But here I am at this conference, my head is exploding with ideas, and Elena Cardone comes here and she starts talking about supporting her husband, and it lit me up. I could be supporting my wife. So what? I'm still wearing pants. Everything's where it's supposed to be. My wife had, so I made the decision. I'm going to support my wife. And I signed up for stages, and here I am. And it took me a long time to come up with this little mini chat, introduction and heart story. Because the first story was a gripping story that I think I want to save for a different platform, for a foundation and other things that I would like to do. But my first priority is to help my wife. By helping her, I'm helping this family. And at the same time, I'm signed up for ClickFunnels, so I know that I can help her using those systems. And I already am in the process of starting an online e-commerce business. And yes, all this is happening after 57 years of nothing but getting beat up by life. Not like some of you. Didn't have 12 spine surgeries. I don't have a hat around me, but my hat off to you. My hat off to some of the other people here that have had incredible situations. I never had to go dance naked. All these things I've never had to do. But I had other things that I needed to do that for me weighed on me. And they depleted and chipped away at my self-esteem for a long, long time. And thanks to Grant and to Elena and to 10X community for giving me the hope and the dream and the energy to get back on a horse. Even though I'm older, I limp because of an injury on my leg. Yes, I'm having issues. I just found out Monday I have cataracts on both eyes. Both eyes, cataracts. You can't see them even if you get close, but I'm thinking I've been going to the eye doctor almost every year. A year and a half ago, I went and I got these new glasses, which are thicker than before. I already knew that I started to have some cataract here, but a year and a half later, now I have them on both eyes. It's like, all right, I gotta hurry up. I gotta hurry up for a number of reasons. That, and also because my wife has also have been doing work on herself. And one of the things that she found out is her connection to her past and to her family, and particularly to her mom, and how some of the things that happened in those early years were affecting her still today. And I came to the realization that I perhaps have not been successful, not so much also because of all the things that I have been through, and I allowed myself to fall into that trap, but because of what Grant says in a way, for not having dreams big enough that I will opaque all that pain and all this aggravation, but also because perhaps in a strange way, I was trying not to outshine my dad. Can you believe that? That thought came to my mind. I've been trying not to outshine my dad. And by doing that, I think, of course, I'm not getting anywhere. But you know what? That's going to change. My dad is 83. And now I pray to God, give me another year or two with my dad, sane enough to see me succeed and to see me on stage in a 10X conference, hopefully for 2020. See you all there.